Test. It's still a little bit of a hum.
I went to that presentation on Fox.
Right.
That you guys did. That's good to get caught up on all of that. That was fun. Yeah. Okay, I guess we're gonna open this meeting with the Historic Preservation Commission of Trinidad, February 12th, 2020. Roll call, please.
Delicio,
Present.
Rogan, Smith,
Present?
Pritchard.
Present. Public comments on any items not listed on the agenda? We don't have any of those.
No.
New business.
This is the minutes first.
Oh, the minutes, sorry. I skipped over that. So, we have we need to approve the minutes from January 8th. Just the three of us were here, so if somebody wants to.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call, please.
Okay, Delicio,
Yes.
Smith,
Aye.
and Pritchard.
Yes. Sorry, okay, now, we got that. Now, new business, Ms. Clark, do you have new business?
Well, I know we put off the chairman and the vice chair because Shannon wasn't here last time, but she's not here today either, so you wanna go ahead and elect chair and vice
Sure,
chair?
so what's the situation if she has not attended a meeting since she was appointed?
Yeah, I think it's if there's 3 unexcused absences, then
Isn't this the third?
I think it is. I'll have to check for sure. We do need the real estate professional, so I guess we should have a talk with her and see if she's gonna be able to make the meetings, or we'll have to find someone else.
Okay. So is anybody, I'm looking at you two.
I nominate Chris. He has a very good articulating.
Thank you.
Are you interested in the chair's position?
I am. I'm also interested in the makeup of the board, so I mean, we can have a conditional kind of thing, and we just have to have 4 people here,
4.
as far as I'm concerned.
3 would be the quorum. Is it 4 a quorum?
3's a quorum, but
Well,
for the
5
board to feel like it's valid and
Yeah.
for it to exist, and there's a reason why that 4th person is a real estate professional, so as long as we have a commitment from everybody on the board to be here for the meetings, I'd be happy to. Make sense?
And if she can't commit?
And if she can't commit, then between now and our next meeting, would it be possible to find that 4th person?
Well,
I
we've
mean-
had a real difficult time. We
Tried for 2 years,
advertise.
haven't we?
We have to advertise for them. The other position that we still are missing is a design professional. We're supposed to have at least 5.
Architectural design? No, doesn't matter.
Well, it just refers to it as design professional. It would be wonderful if they had art history, architectural art history, something like that. A general contractor who understands buildings, could probably work for us.
Well, that would have been my qualification.
Yeah, you have that. General contractor.
Yeah, I've done historical work
So we have that, so it's on the list.
here in Telluride, a lot of Telluride.
Okay. I'll go over that
So
with
you could-
Audra and see if we could, if that would work for the design professional for sure, and then we could get one real estate person, and then the
Mhm.
other could be just a member at large.
Yeah.
Cool.
So,
That's great.
yeah, I would love to have a full commission.
Yeah, I mean, it needs to have its full body to be valid in the eyes of the community, in my view.
We've
3 of
only-
us and the wishes and hopes for the 2 more doesn't work as well as we're a team of 5, we're looking to work together and were I to be elected chair, I could reach out personally
Definitely.
to folks in those.
We've
Yeah.
only had 5 for the first 6 months of our existence. And then they started bailing, and now, who's our realtor?
Rick Johnson.
Isn't he now on the board of the Mitchell?
I'm not sure, he told me he was getting ready to move.
He's gonna move
After
to
the
South
summer.
Carolina or something. Well,
So-
anyway, yeah, we do need, okay, then, if you're gonna accept a provisional position,
Yes.
do you wanna switch chairs or
As
just
chairman?
take it from there?
I'll just take it from here.
Okay.
We don't have to have a vote on the motion? Or,
I
Or
thought we
just hold
did.
an election?
well, we just held the.
I make a motion to hold an election, to elect me as chair.
Good.
2/3 majority rules.
I thought we had all three.
I think we did.
We
yeah.
did.
Okay, and then vice chair?
Gee, do you have any interest?
Yeah, I'll serve. I've been doing it for 2 years, so I usually come, okay, I only miss one meeting.
That, okay, that's fine, I'm in favor.
Okay.
Okay,
I too.
okay, I'll go with that.
Wonderful. So I
We're sad that
I'm
you're
gonna
leaving.
take the reins now.
Sad that you're
Please.
leaving, Wayne, we appreciate your service.
Are you stepping off the board?
No.
No.
You're
Just
stepping
that-
off as chair.
Yeah, I was, as chair of both this and planning and zoning, I was told at the conference that there could be a conflict of interest at some point, and I would have to recuse myself from one decision or the other. Maybe just being on the board, it won't be it wouldn't come up as an issue.
Yep.
Besides, I don't wanna be anymore.
But we do appreciate all you've done since, what was it, December 17? You've been serving as chair?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. Next order of business 4B, alteration certificates criteria. I hope Georgie can enlighten
Explain.
us on that.
Let me keep know one of these. So when we landmark a property, we have to be able to tell people what they're getting into. So we do need to come up with the criteria, the guidelines, which we're gonna address too. But we also need to address if someone has landmarked their property and then they wanna make some kind of change and alteration, that has to be reviewed by this commission. So the first page there is just kind of a little summary from the ordinance, just things that I pulled out of the ordinance. So, a landmark alteration certificate's required for local landmarking and local designated district. So this does not apply to the core zone district at all, because we have not locally designated the historic district. That was it's on the national register, but we have, as this commission has not locally landmarked the core zone district. If that makes sense to you, okay. So we need to put together a detailed list of submittal requirements for the application. Our ordinance does call for administrative review of minor alterations, and we need to determine those, what you consider minor, and then which items should come to the commission. Anything we do in the minor category, that would be handled by the planning department, which is myself. At any time in that process, if something comes up, I can refer it to the commission as a whole to make those decisions, to review it and make the decision. But we need to come up with the criteria. The applicant can appeal a decision of our commission, and it would go to city council for final review. So that's a little bit of information, although none of this applies to what's in chapter 14, the planning and zoning in regard to unsafe and dangerous buildings. The fire official and the building official and the city manager can make a decision that something is unsafe and needs to be demolished without coming before this commission.
Sorry, that's part 14, what?
It's in chapter 14 of the planning and zoning. Planning and zoning is chapter 14 of municipal code, and you don't have a copy of that.
Gotcha.
It's like very thick. The one
Okay.
chapter is, I think, 294 pages, but it is online if you
Okay.
ever want to look something up.
Chapter 14 of the planning and zoning.
Yeah, you go on the website, which is trinidad.co.gov,
Yep.
and then there's a tab at the bottom that says municipal code. Go in there, and
It's chapter 14 of the municipal code.
yes.
Right.
And it refers to, again, derelict buildings?
Well, buildings dangerous, unsafe, dangerous buildings.
And what does it say the city can do about those?
Have them demolished.
With how much notice to the property owner?
Well, I'm gonna have to dig into that a little bit.
That's all good. 48 hours.
Part of the information, last
Probably 2 years.
meeting I handed out the design guidelines that apply to the core zone district, and that
Right.
was taken from chapter 14.
Okay.
They publish it in the paper, actually, when something's gonna be demolished.
Publish it. But, those three individuals, city manager, fire official, and the building official can determine a building unsafe. In that chapter 14, it does say if someone wants to demolish their building, they need to have a study done that says that it is unrepairable, it is dangerous, and it's unrepairable. So you can look that up in that chapter 14.
And that's outside of historic designation or not?
That's just the historic district.
That's the historic district.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the historic district. But also within our ordinance 1975, it does state this as well, that those three individuals can decide a building needs to be demolished. And what follows that is just some samples of, there's Salida, and then there's some information from Boulder, what they require. So, if you can kind of just look those over too, like you have the design guidelines, and then, think it through a little bit. I think some of these were pretty good for forms. But that's really important. I think we really need to get this done before we ask anybody else or encourage anybody else to landmark their building, because we need to be able to tell them what criteria thereafter we're going to look at.
Could the Secretary of the Interior design, restoration guidelines? A lot of municipalities use that as a baseline for guidelines. Couldn't we adopt that as our baseline for criteria?
It does refer to these guidelines in our ordinance. We can adopt additional ones, so this we can find online. I didn't print out copies of this because it is quite long. So
What is
we
that
can,
now?
this is the Secretary of Interior Standards for Rehabilitation.
Oh, yeah.
And it's an illustrated guidelines. I believe you took a lot of the information for the mural.
I have a copy of it,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, and this goes through, it talks about masonry, roofing, just all these different elements of a building, and how the Secretary of Interior thinks they should be.
So,
Yeah.
have we adopted those as a standard?
Yeah, this is in our ordinance. It doesn't list it out specifically, but it's, the guidelines for the, it's in our ordinance. So, this is something for you to consider. We need to get the criteria together, what we're gonna review, how we're going to tell people that, you know, once you've landmarked your property, give them all the information right at the very beginning, so they know what they're doing.
So I don't understand. If those restoration guidelines are in the ordinance, are they not what we could use for, in this case,
Well, these are two different things. You referred to this as these guidelines, but what I'm talking about is an alteration certificate. So, you know, we've landmarked the Carnegie Library, and that's the only one, that's a public building, so I'm not concerned about that. But before we ask any individual property owner or encourage people to landmark their properties, we need to be able to provide them with all the information. This is how you landmark your property, these are the benefits of it. Once you decide to do that, if it's landmarked, then if you wanna make any changes, you need to know that you have to come before this commission to get approval for any changes to that landmark property. And that's what the landmark alteration certificate information is about.
So if Carnegie Library was in the city of Salida and they wanted to put on a new roof,
Right.
and they already asked for it to be landmarked by the city, they would need to fill out this form. If Carnegie Library was in Boulder, they would fill out this form. And your question is, which is the best form for
Well,
us?
yeah, I wanted to kind of review these, get an idea of what it is, you know, think it through. And then there, like I say, our ordinance allows for the administrative review of minor changes. So within that, you need to think about which things that you would allow. Some of these examples in here, I believe it's, let me see which one it is here.
Okay, I'm still unclear. Major activity, if they're applying for, an alteration certificate and it's listed as a major activity, what are our standards or guidelines when they,
Then we would go to
To that.
this
okay,
currently.
all right,
But we need to prepare what we're gonna require.
right.
And you'll see, it's like the Salida one, that second page there, they've listed out the minor activity and the major. The
Right.
minor would just go to the planning department, I would look it over if it just seems, you know, like they're gonna change their paint color on their trim, whatever like that, then that would be handled in the planning department. If they wanna change windows, something of that nature, then that's a major change and it's gonna have to come before this commission to get the full commission to look at what they're doing. And we would apply these. If we do create, more local ones or ones that comply with this, but maybe we wanna have our own little specific ones, we can do that too. But it has to meet with the Secretary of Interior guidelines. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So this is separate from your guidelines, this is just preparing the documents so we can tell everybody at the very beginning, this is our landmark program, this is what you're agreeing to do, and if you wanna make any changes, you need to comply with this as well. Okay?
mhm.
So if you just take some time to look that one through, that was all I had on that one, okay?
Thank you.
My one thought is, which is the best certificate and which one works best, Salida or Boulder and that's where our real estate professional voice will be super, super helpful.
Yes, although, you know, Boulder is gonna be much more stringent, they have all different types of districts that they've designated, and it's a much bigger process. Maybe the Salida ones, simple little ones are all we need at this point, just to make sure people understand that any change they do, if they wanna put a fence up, then we need to review that, you know. Does that all make sense?
Excellent. Next piece of business, 5A, unfinished business and design guidelines.
Okay, so we got another handout here. Did you all get a chance to really review those various different guidelines, and I emailed out some links to?
I did, I went through a few of them and printed off some.
So last meeting, we handed out this packet, which was the district and the guidelines that are in the district there. And let's see what's in here. But if in here, it refers to that. This also refers to the Secretary of the Interior Standards here. And I don't know if I printed it out in here or not, let's see. So it does say, within the core zone, it says no historic structure located in the district may be demolished or otherwise removed unless said historic structure has been certified as both structurally compromised and irreparable by a structural engineer licensed in the state of Colorado. So, very similar to what we have in here. So, tell me your thoughts, what you looked at the design guidelines.
Well, some of them obviously were very long and very detailed, but what I printed off were the introductions and the purpose of different, for instance, Boulder. And what they think is important about design guidelines, and a reasonable balance. And this is in our ordinance as well, between private property rights and public interest in preserving the city's cultural and so that's what I looked at, which is what I think the stage we're in is defining why we need design guidelines.
We don't absolutely have to create additional guidelines. We can go by the Secretary of the Interior standards.
Yeah. Well, Boulder uses those. The Landmarks Board adopted those standards as the basis for guidance on rehabilitation design for historic properties. So Boulder uses them as well.
I believe that's pretty much a requirement of a certified local government, that their guidelines and their review of properties complies with that Department of Interior guidelines.
Yeah.
So, this was taken out of the book that I gave all of you last week, that reminder book, that had information about certified local governments, and they say it's fine just to go with the Secretary of the Interior standards, but they suggest, we can come up with something that's a little more applies to this area, if that's what you want to do. We can certainly develop those.
Isn't there such a variety of architectural styles that it would be hard to come up with something for each architectural style?
Well, I think it would apply to, they would be general in nature, where it would apply to all architectural styles. Like if a window is rotted out, needs to be replaced, you need to put an appropriate window in it, not a metal framed type thing. So this is information you can look over again, and we can make that decision down the road. It's not something that, we have to do immediately. I think the alteration certificate, we need to get our complete packet of information together. I think that's a real
Is that
priority.
in addition to those, all those designated, or landmarking applications? We have to have another, that later form, this
Well,
alteration form?
we need to prepare written
Landmark.
criteria that we are going to judge. We're gonna review each application.
Okay.
And it's really important, as a quasi-judicial commission, you need to be able to have the findings, you know, when you review something, you need to come up with your findings, and that has to be, we need to have the written criteria that we're judging that on. And it's really important to protect ourselves liability. But we need to be able to provide that to people at the very beginning of this process. We want everybody to be really happy, wanna do this, and know what they're getting into.
I think the Secretary of Interior standards for rehab are very viable. I would personally like to try to rewrite them, not to change the meaning of any one of 10, but to rephrase it, to make it sound like us, to use the word here in Trinidad or something like it. And if it's okay, I would like to create that draft and send it to you, Georgie, and you could distribute it to the rest of the commission. Is that, can we move forward on revising a document like that?
Okay, well, one thing I was gonna kinda talk about in my report, which, maybe I'm changing.
Go ahead and jump it
schedule
up,
a
yeah.
bit. I was gonna talk, and I was hoping Shannon would be here so I could explain, we talked about the, quasi-judicial aspect of the commission. So there's certain things like individual applications, you know, you can be out in the community encouraging people to get in the program, but anybody that is serious about it, wants to come in, they really can't interact with you. They can only interact with me as they put their application together. Then we hold a public hearing, and that application is provided to you, and you have to determine your decision based only on what's in the application and what's heard in public testimony during the public hearing. So that's the quasi-judicial part of it. But the commission can be a working commission, and I'm really hoping that you will all agree to this, because I only have so much time to, you know, with the planning department, the planning and zoning commission, and the brownfields grant and historic preservation, it's just more than I can accomplish real fast. So I was gonna propose different things that we've talked about we wanted to do. We talked about education, we need to do a lot of PR, we need to look at design guidelines. I know, Commissioner Pritchard was very interested in design guidelines, and I was thinking that maybe one of us could, you know, focus on different areas. I was thinking about someone, and I was really kind of thinking of a new chairman, doing an ongoing article in the paper about what is preservation, what is historic preservation, just small little
Sure.
articles that would be ongoing. Maybe we could get with the chroniclers, that they'd help us out a great deal. And I'm not suggesting just you, anybody who would wanna work with that, focus on education, so just kind of design little committees, you know, where you're gonna kind of focus on this and then bring it to the commission, you'll focus on this and bring it to the commission. Are you in favor of that?
I think that a strategic PR campaign on behalf of this commission is really important this spring. And when we have a full commission and guidelines, not standards, not law, not even a rule, but just a guideline for historic properties in Trinidad, that if you want to be eligible for landmarking, start thinking about these things. And we have a clear application process for landmarking, and we have a clear application process for alteration
Yes.
certificates. That at that time, I think it would be great to create a PR campaign
Right.
that would be
Okay.
collaborating with the newspaper, that would be
Mhm.
live streaming this meeting in different ways and stuff. until then, I don't want people to tune in and find that we're revising criteria alteration certificates, because that people will not exactly understand.
Right, and I was kind of thinking about starting out about what is historic preservation, not
Sure.
specifically our program, give some general, you know, nationwide information, you know, just kind of get people thinking about historic preservation. But if any, you know, if anyone wants to kind of focus on that and design a plan for that and then bring it to the commission, I think that's the way we could get things done a little faster.
I had mentioned in a previous meeting, perhaps a historic preservation weekend in
Yes,
Trinidad.
and that's another.
And I'm gonna throw it out again, thinking that by then, the community will have bought into this process and the work of this commission in new ways that would make sense to celebrate these buildings that we have.
Commissioner Delicio, how do you feel about the committees and all that?
Well, I already served a whole year trying to get a marketing plan and a book together, and it was vetoed almost every meeting that I went to about trying to get Cosette to write the stories, and we got the, so I'm kind of, you know, backing off because I've spent a lot of time on meeting with Cosette, getting together with, trying to get the book together on 48. We had a proposal to rebid on it, so, I mean,
Yeah,
I like
I
committee
fear.
work, and I feel like working on it, but I would like the commission to give the guidelines, and when we do, we come back to the next meeting and it seems to have changed.
Well, there was never any real proposal for what you were trying to put
Yes,
together.
well, there was, we had 48 buildings we were going to put in a book, and hadn't identified those 48 buildings, but we were working with Cosette to identify them, and we met with her several times to get the information approved by the Journal, by the Chronicle News, to get them to give her release of those articles, so that because they paid for them. They paid for those articles, and so
Who paid for it?
Trinidad Chronicle News, because Cosette had written quite a few. She hadn't written all of them.
This is the kind of
It's quite
historical mess that I really don't wanna have to rethink
Yeah,
and
me neither.
relive.
I don't
Can I
think-
right now apply for a historic landmark designation for a property on the website of trinidad.co.gov?
And you've got to come in and get the paperwork.
I'd have to come in and get the paperwork.
No,
Or
we
is the
do.
process described online?
Yes, it
Okay.
is. If you wanna look at the page, I put the, application forms up, I put,
Nice,
you know,
nice.
the new commissioners' names up and everything, so you can
Cool.
take a look at that and see. You know, I wanna develop that much more, but, we do have the application up on the website.
So I'm zooming out here, but thinking strategically about the work of this commission, I totally understand where PR
Right.
needs to be a big force of this. And you understand my logic where we don't have anything to PR with until we adopt this for ourselves and the alteration certificate criteria and have those two things in place, and then end with a couple other seats filled, a brochure that would describe the work of the Historic Preservation Commission. Not an expensive glossy thing, but a threefold brochure that could be at every motel, it could be at every business, it could be at the visitor center, and through the summer, that piece of paper could inform the community.
Well, some of the notes I made, we could include something like that in the electric bill,
Oh, there we go.
you know, or as a
Yes.
flyer in the paper. But,
Mhm.
and, you know, and the utility bills would be a great place to reach practically everybody.
I'd much rather go utility bills than newspaper sounded complicated.
Well, in motels, that wouldn't reach anybody we need to reach.
Oh, I mean on the desk at La Quinta for folks to recognize Trinidad as recognizing its own historic properties.
I think
Another,
that working with Main Street would be a good thing too, according to the feedback we had at the conference, if we show a unified teamwork with the Main Street people.
Mm-hmm.
I think we do need to coordinate more, or them with us, because what they do impacts what we're to be in charge of.
Right.
And I don't think they should be just running loose.
Well, especially on the facade, cause they're seeming to get money from the facade development, or the facade.
I know, yeah.
And we need to help.
We don't currently have funding for the facade. There are boards and commissions meeting that, former chairman and I attended. We have gotten some money from them to do some of the things we've done, and the Main Street Group has gotten money from that to do some of their projects, but.
And how do people apply for that money? Is that commercial and residential at the same time?
No, we just apply for the money at the meetings. If we have something that we want funded, for instance, our trips to the,
Oh, well, I meant the private people that wanna get their facade improved and get money as a
There
subsidy.
isn't that program.
They don't have that?
No.
Okay.
No, they, through the Main Street Group, I don't know, it's Colorado or National Main Street Group, but they do have some sources of grants that they can apply for as well, so maybe that's how they're getting funding for things. But yes, that's why we had the chairperson Penny Sadie come and speak to the commission a few meetings back, because it is, the certified local government and the Main Street groups are really connected, and in those books I gave you last week, it referred to that quite a bit. It's prepared for both.
When are their meetings? Do
organizations.
they ever talk about historical preservation?
Yes, they do. They talk about it, but it's a different type thing. They're trying to build up the downtown area, business-wise, and, bring people into the downtown area. Our commission is citywide. We're trying
More
to
broad-based.
impact citywide.
Mm-hmm.
But I do agree with the chairman. I think that we need to get all our ducks in a row, but be thinking about if you'd wanna focus on a different type of, committee.
one thing that I made a note of was, and somewhere locally, we have, and I didn't make a note of it, I saw it in the paper, a local group that's taking our high school students out into doing different education projects, like out in the, on the river or somewhere. And I was thinking that maybe we could go to the, and I don't know if it would be the, Board of Education or the individual schools, and try to work in a little education program for students. And it would be like a short hour-long or whatever presentation about our history, about the trail, about the buildings, about their grandfathers who built this place. You know, it was these children's ancestors, predecessors, who put this whole place together. And I think if we can start with get a little something in the school programs, that would help foster what we're doing. And, you know, I could ask how that might be done.
Okay. So we could create these little subcommittees that would focus on different things as I'm sure we're gonna
the
do.
History Museum, they came to Primero and they have a 4th grade program, because that's where Colorado history gets taught. And that's where we were supposed to do our magazine, based on Colorado state standards for 4th grade.
Dream scenario, in my mind, would be next meeting, we have found 2 more members.
Yeah.
We have a alteration certificate criteria, rough draft, or at least we have a sense of which one we want. Yeah, to just use Salidas, I
think
next
that's
meeting, I
good.
would love to just give that a
Use
thumbs
Salidas.
up.
I don't know why we have to have another form, because we just landmarked, we spent 2 months on landmarking, so this is a different form.
But at our
Landmarking
next
was
meeting,
different.
we
So
leave our
alteration.
next meeting with both forms and our guidelines
Right.
intact, and then the meeting following, some of the entities that we've mentioned here, like the History Museum, the Main Street Board, and there was a separate one that I'm not even, it's not Main Street,
Oh,
it's
Development, urban.
Creative district?
Creative
Creative
District, thank you.
District, yeah.
I would love to invite those
Yeah.
folks to not the next meeting, but the meeting after, at which we could share our 3 new documents and explain our mission and get buy-in from those groups. Does that make sense?
I like
Yes.
that.
In
No, I
a
would
PR
love-
kind of way, PR with
Mhm.
folks that we kind of know would be interested anyway,
Mhm.
and then PR with a wider community.
And there was a workshop I went to at the conference that had a app that you have a survey done at the same time, everybody brings their phone, and you, I'll have to get you that, it was an
I've
amazing
seen
app,
those.
did you
I
see
had
that
to
one?
leave, I had to leave that one.
They give us, they just have 5 questions, and you can put it up on the computer, what
Because
everybody's
everybody's phone
thinking in the
talks to
room.
them.
My phone wouldn't do that, so I left.
I didn't think I could, but I got on and it was a really, and it
Nice.
was done by Main Street Group in Denver, and it was also done by Boulder
Cool.
County. They did it, but they still haven't sent me the PowerPoint, but it was a really,
Hmm.
and I know you wanna do electric bill survey, but this is to get the people that are on the boards together, to make sure we're on the same page, and that's how this survey was
Okay.
registered, so I'll look into that, because I thought that was an impressive way to get people in the room to collaborate,
Right.
work together. You see the results right on the board of what was prioritized.
Cool.
So I'll help make a survey
Cool.
to get feedback.
Okay, I did wanna say one other thing about the guidelines. We can, create our own individual guidelines that would be, examples. They wouldn't be regulatory unless city council put those into effect, okay? Only city council is the one that can do anything regulatory.
Sure.
So, just keep that in mind, but yes, if you guys could look through that and come through and you can mark it up, you know, I want this and this and this and maybe we should take that out, that type thing, and we can finalize them.
Well, I do like your idea of a video going into schools, because that's a good entry. If you wanna look at this video, can we come to your history class? Go to the history teachers in the high schools.
Well, I wonder if we could
So-
collaborate with Trinidad History Museum or whatever.
I know, that's a good one. They're already
To
here.
kind of help them create something that meets our new needs. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? There's
Exactly.
groups out there looking for
Already
that
doing
kind of
it.
collaboration.
Mhm.
So, I don't think there's, in my time on this board, I haven't heard anybody on a regulatory streak. You made that distinction, and then council would, of course, they would make regulations and we would make guidelines. And I think we could pass a resolution to that effect, that we don't make regulations and we know it and we love it. Right? And just to put everybody at ease and then,
Well, no, there, I don't think.
where is is there any regulatory?
Yes,
Yes,
Just
once the
recommendation.
property is landmarked,
That's
But-
when we have regulatory power as a commission.
yeah, but,
Okay.
But
but
there
in that sense, the guidelines are the guidelines into how we are reviewing the properties.
but I don't think the guidelines pertain only to landmarked properties.
Oh.
I'm with you.
I think it has to be a broader application, and most municipalities have standards which are enforceable and guidelines which are voluntary.
Oh.
And without enforceable standards, there's no point in having any real guidelines if they're just purely voluntary.
Well,
Mhm.
the guidelines as voluntary citywide, and if you're landmarked, they become a standard that we expect you to adhere to.
Yeah, but then we still don't, people that don't landmark their buildings within the historic district can still then degrade their
Oh, yeah.
buildings. And that's what we want to avoid.
Mhm.
It's what we want to avoid, but I think that changing the culture of historic preservation in this town will win it more than trying to create regulation towards that.
Well, at some point, there has to be a combination of standards and guidelines.
And at some point, we may work with, council may approve that, but really, they are the elected body, and they are the representative of all the people, so they're the ones that have to make those
But they won't make
decisions.
that decision on their own, it'll never cross their mind.
No, you can advise,
It has
yes,
to
this
be,
commission.
it has to be generated here and presented to them.
I'm in favor of taking these Secretary of Interior standards for rehab and creating guidelines that we say on the front of the flyer, hey, did you know your house is awesome and historic? And here's what we, City of Trinidad Historic Preservation Commission, recommend you do to keep it historic.
Yeah.
By the way, here's our landmark process. And once we have some steam behind that and people have seen it and are starting to understand it, I'm in favor of approaching council and having a discussion about, hey, you've seen this already. It's out and about on the street and people are starting to understand it. What would be your top 3 that we could make stronger by way of council? And having that discussion with council later this year. Right now, to put something out in the community that's positive and proactive and nobody has to think about, is that my house or what are these new rules? No, it's very clearly not a rule. It's just your house is historic. It's awesome. Here's a way to keep it that way, right? And chat it with council later.
Okay. So, are we moving on now?
We are on to item 6, Chairman's report. That would be me. I have a report about the last 20 minutes. It's been fantastic. Item 7, Commissioners' reports.
It's been fantastic to go to that conference. It
Yeah,
was very,
went to the conference. Everything that I attended had to do with design guidelines. And listening to different representatives from different cities and how they, what they have and how it's been effective or not effective and how it's enforced or not enforced. And so that was pretty much what.
the one I thought that was good that I went to was on the people from URA went to Japan, the scenic byways, and they got to tour all those scenic byways and got hands-on experience with the Japanese culture had adopted Colorado for the scenic byways, the plaques and how it was run. And these 2 people got to go all over Japan. And the one thing they mentioned was how clean the bathrooms were. Every scenic byway that they went to. And and people requested that we look at the DOT, the what do you call that, the one right off of how clean our and they also have farmers markets at their byway places. So they also bring, and cultural facilities, I mean, they bring any kind of sales, they have art of the region that they bring into these to sell, so that's part of their way of making money. And I thought that was an interesting
That's very
method.
cool.
It was good, it was a good presentation from URA. This lady had gone all over Japan with this other, I don't know whether, I think it was the State Department.
Wow.
But if we could keep our, what do you call it, our story, or what do you call them, bathrooms clean on those highway, our exits. And we don't even have a scenic, this sign on I-25 that says Highway of Legends. Have you seen that coming from Raton? That is so old you can't even see Highway of Legends. How do we figure out who operating that? Because you can't even, if you're coming from Raton, that Scenic Legends highway is not
It would be
the billboard. It's a billboard and you can't even, it's so worn out, the paint, so.
Oh, it's a billboard, it's
It's
not
a billboard,
a state sign.
If you
I don't
notice
know.
that coming through from Raton.
Hopefully, 2 meetings from now, we'll have the right person in the room and they'll say, this is our
I think
billboard.
it's tourism, but I'm not sure who owns that,
I
but
kind of wondered
State.
that.
There's a scenic byway organization as well, Colorado Scenic Byway Association.
I think that's who
So,
made
it
that
might be-
presentation. But that was so interesting, but, I
Mm.
mean, why not have a farmer's market and a mart show up there and show off every weekend what's going on in the city?
In your attending presentations about design guidelines, did you find any community that's around where we're at that don't have them yet, but want to and kind of do?
No, there was one community that had only recommendations and they were not having much luck with that because there was no enforcement. Some communities like Telluride have the ability to make people remove something that did not fit the guidelines.
Mm.
I mean, some places have real teeth in their ordinances.
Mm.
So anyway, most of them had not only an ordinance, but guidelines.
Cool.
One thing, I've been trying to get a moratorium on murals. I don't know how
Yes.
that's going, but
I'll vote for that. Where you could join.
one person I was talking to, and I can't remember the community, but they had spent almost $30,000 on the substrate, on the paint, on the preparation, on the design, on hiring the artist. It was not just a community, a bunch of people
Right.
with giveaway paint.
Mm.
And it was already starting to deteriorate. And then,
I think that, city attorney and, city clerk Roger Garrett and I met with the economic development director just yesterday on that issue. And I think they are going to take something to council in that regard.
Good.
So you'll see something happen, at
moratorium?
least temporary. Well, I can't say for sure it'll be a moratorium, but, they're gonna address the
So-
issues because they've been going up in the area, and there's a lot of people wanna do it. The Main Street group wants to do a lot of murals and,
yeah, it's a much more complicated thing than people have been
Especially on
presenting.
historic buildings and commercial buildings.
and there again, the Planning and Zoning Commission did, a few months back,
Mhm.
someone raised the concern over murals going up in the historic district, and, they're an advisory to the city council as the historic preservation is, and we prepared a letter and it went to city council. So city council is aware that planning and zoning has serious concerns on murals, and, I don't know if this commission wants to do that as well, I don't take any direction.
Well, if it's already in process,
I think they are going to look at it. I can't tell you what the result will be at this
Yeah.
point, but, they are looking at that issue. So,
And I think your strategy is very precise and get these
Yes,
guidelines.
I firmly believe that the two
Strategy.
public application, public application and the alteration certificate and the guidelines as per Secretary of the Interior standards for rehab, to have those three things that in final draft form for our next meeting where we can vote to approve all three of them, I think that would be awesome. Is it possible for me to send you a draft of this and then
Sure.
you distribute it to the commission?
yeah.
So, fellow commissioners, you could
We'll
commit
look
to,
for-
when you see a draft of this, make any changes to it within 7 days and get it back to Georgie?
7 days?
7 days, because then,
The
because
next
I wanted
month
to
we
go
wanna
back
go-
to Georgie and I want anybody who wants to look at this and so then at our next meeting, we can truly give it a thumbs up and have something cool to pass around town,
Mhm.
right?
Okay.
And also, it's a top priority for me to fill the other 2 empty seats
That's a good plan.
of this commission.
Well-
Like I said, they do have to advertise, I'll
Okay.
talk with the
Can we
city-
please do that? Yeah.
I'll talk to the city clerk about, Commissioner Rogan and see what we should do there, and then she'll have to advertise, but
Okay.
if you know somebody, you can encourage them to watch for that ad and then come in. And I know
So you'll
it's,
contact Shannon?
well, I'm gonna talk with Audra and see what the situation is exactly, make sure exactly what the rules are.
Are you unexcused, you said?
Mhm.
And I'll go back and check all that, and, if she can commit to always being at the meetings, I don't wanna give up on her, but I'll check into that and let y'all know. You can certainly encourage somebody to watch for the advertisement for the Historic Preservation Commission, and
I think we should keep your idea on that September though, trying to get
Well,
Labor Day.
yeah, I mean, if we have to
Labor
put
Day
this
and-
off a month, then we do so. Imagine our next meeting happens and it's just still the three of us. I say we pass the documents, but we don't plan on having the Main Street Board and the History Museum and the the next one. But when we have a fully seated board, we meet with those folks and we talk about how, here's our new documents, we're gonna be creating a flyer. And if I had to pick something, it would be the first weekend of September, which is kind of Blues Fest and kind of Artacade.
Yeah.
And even if
Labor
it's
Day.
just the three of us leading folks around historic buildings,
Yeah.
handing out that flyer that we created, I think it would be really cool to call it a history weekend.
We're still thinking about the parade, right, the rodeo parade on Labor Day, that weekend too, by Artacade, cause Blues Festival is in August. Isn't it?
I'm not clear on release dates.
Usually it's the last weekend before Labor Day.
Yeah,
It's
so there's
Blues
like 3
Fest,
weekends
but-
in a row that have things going on
But
pretty big.
I think there may be some changes to the Blues Fest this year. They were
Yeah.
talking like it wouldn't be at Central Park, it might just be in the downtown area, so,
I think it's good to be at all those events and promote ourselves.
It is. As chairman, I'm gonna take the moment and say that if there was one thing I would want city council to do, and that's do quickly, and this is based on experiences that I've had on the professional level, representing Trinidad and representing the awesomeness that we are to come, and that would be to appoint immediately a full-time, permanent city manager. There is a revolving door at this city, and we have a reputation, and that's a shame. And
Well, but that's not,
and if our
that's not
interim
our
was,
bailiwick.
we represent the city of Trinidad to an extent that we are represented by the choices of council. And I would be fine if they took the interim and appointed him to be full-time city manager. There's nothing at all wrong with that. I'd also be fine if they chose to do a national search, but it is difficult to represent this community and this municipality, given the revolving door of leadership.
Well, we all know that.
And
We've known it for a very long time.
I understand, and if there was, I'm not saying we should send a resolution to council, but I feel almost that strongly. It is becoming difficult to represent this community because people say, oh, Trinidad, who are you hiring next? And that's really, I just moved here. I shouldn't have to be feeling that. That feels very ugly.
I'm telling you, we've all been through this many times,
I
and
understand.
so far, the council has not ever made a good decision.
well, one of the difficulties is in getting someone from the outside is, you know, with the qualifications, is they look at it as a stepping stone. And that's just what they do. They wanna come in, be here 2 years and go on to another bigger city.
Except then the one person who was headed for retirement turned out to be as big a dud as anybody else.
Well, I don't mind
Okay.
saying publicly that I think the council should sell itself as more awesome than that. Thank you.
Well,
I do wanna say up at that CPI conference, it was wonderful the attention that Trinidad got. The mayor, it ended up being that,
Speaker.
on the endangered, places, well, the Corazon was removed from the endangered places luncheon. The mayor was supposed to speak there, but the keynote speaker was supposed to be, I believe it was the head of the, Colorado Senate. And I'm not sure the reason he couldn't be there, but at the last minute he couldn't be there, and all the attention went to Trinidad. The mayor was the only one that spoke up there, even though 4 places were taken off the endangered places list and 4 were put on. Trinidad was the only one that got that coverage,
He
and,
did a great speech. It was
and
great.
I know it was, I did the arrangements. Right after that, there was a reporter that wanted to interview the mayor, and, you know, so there was a lot of good.
Maybe we should say the
focus on
staff has endured and done a great job despite having a rotating manager position, because look, we have 18 million for art space to create, we have
I'm not
I
even
agree with-
historically reflecting on it. I'm saying from this
24
hour
million for-
forward,
Okay.
awesomeness.
can we move
Yeah.
along?
There's only a couple more things, I don't know if we're
Please.
ready for.
Yeah, can we just go along with the agenda?
Commissioners.
Okay, then, I wanted to let you know that the Certified History Colorado has a grant for, they're offering 5 scholarships to the National Alliance of Preservation Commissioners Forum. It's gonna be July 22nd to the 26th in Tacoma, Washington. And they will pay, up to $260 for the registration fees. They'll pay $121 per night lodging, $300 round trip airfare maximum.
I'll go.
Ground
I'll qualify.
transportation, $80 and $71 per diem per day. There is an application, there are only gonna be five of them awarded,
Okay.
and the deadline is March 1st of 2020.
I'll apply. I'm trying to recruit Zoomies to come in from Washington.
There
Sports.
you go.
Have you seen their, it's a, skateboard and snowboard,
Oh,
but
We would
in athletic
really,
clothing.
they would really
Awesome.
appreciate this being a learning experience, you know, the national,
Well, we're learning how to recruit people here to this area, to grow our businesses and to grow the diversity of our businesses.
well,
So, I mean, I would take it as a learning experience. Everything I do, I take as a learning experience.
I understand.
I
One of the
appreciate
things
the-
they say here is that,
Appreciate
hmm?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I will give you this information, you can, I've got pencil marks on this one, but you can take this and, submit it to History Colorado. I believe that, one of the things they said in there was that there'd need to be a report written, for reimbursement. So this would all have to be paid ahead of time, and they would reimburse. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, you had asked about how many local properties are on the National Register.
yeah.
There's 14 places on the National Register.
For in Trinidad?
Yes.
Okay.
Then we also have the Corazon District. But there's the Altman House. There's the Bloom Mansion, the Baca House. Those are owned by History Colorado. Of course, the Carnegie Library. There was one that was removed, the bridge over the Purgatory River here, the Commercial Street Bridge. That was removed, but it had been on the register. Of course, the district. The East Street School is on the National Register. The First Baptist Church, that's the one that's located on San Pedro. First Christian Church, First Methodist Episcopal Church, the Joppa Opera House, Frank Latuda House, that's on
Can I
Colorado
get a copy of
Avenue.
that? I'd like to get a copy of that.
Pardon me?
Can we get a copy of that?
Hmm.
Yeah, I can make, I'll send one out.
Or an email?
The Nichols House, or it's also known as the Campbell Lewis Mortuary. Simpson's Rest is on there, which there was a question mark next to it. I don't know if that's,
Interesting.
it was on the list, but there was some
Mhm.
questions about it. The post office and Zion's German Lutheran Church, those are on the register,
National
Correct.
Register.
on the National Register. And,
Is Simpson's Rest city property?
city owns it, it's located within the county, but,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Thank you.
So then there's, an idea I had, I wanted to see what you thought about it, but I've talked before about how I joined the Trinidad Historical Society, try and collaborate with other groups. And I've talked about this book that they prepared a long time ago. In fact, it was Gerald Stokes. It started in 1986. And it's a walking tour through Trinidad. They've got some information on the various buildings and gossip on it, various things. The Trinidad Historical Society sells these for $4 a piece as a fundraiser. They do a lot of really neat things. I was wondering what you thought about going to the boards and commissions meeting, see if they would give us money to purchase a number of these books. You mentioned putting things around town. They're $4 a piece, but if we were to purchase them from the Historical Society, it would benefit them. They're always trying to find locations where they can put them out for sale. We could purchase them, benefit them, and put them out there, and this is already made up. So I wanted to know what you thought about that idea.
I think 1986 is too old to invest in.
Well, it's been
Nothing has
revised.
changed since then.
No?
This-
Well, not as, not
This
anything in
covers
that
the
book would have
history
changed.
of, a lot of the history. I can let you borrow this and you can look through it.
I
But
would love to.
if you're walking along, it tells you about the Columbian Hotel and gives some of the history on the Columbian Hotel. There's a map in here, you know, with the numbers, so you find the number and it gives you history on that particular building. But I think this is a really valuable book.
Yeah, it's,
Temple Aaron, history on Temple
the
Aaron.
history hasn't changed since 1986.
Well, I don't think it would be a useful way to spend money to reprint a book from 1986, even if it means taking that and rebuilding it.
It wouldn't.
Oh, we couldn't take this as our own. This was written by the Historical
Right.
Society and
I'm
it's a
saying-
fundraiser for them.
I would
To
be
create
in
a new
favor-
version that would,
I would be in favor of purchasing those.
how many are we looking to purchase? Couple
Well,
hundred or?
Well, that's what I was thinking. I need to talk to them about, you know, maybe we get a little bit of discount on the cost,
Sure.
but it is a fundraiser for them, so I wouldn't wanna expect too much. Depends on what we would get with the boards and commissions, you know, what they agreed to. I was thinking like 200 to 500 of these, put them in various locations, free, compliments of Trinidad, or, you know, historical commission. That is written by the Trinidad Historical Society. I think I don't expect a decision, but I just thought, think it over
I'd
and.
like to read through it again, because I did read through it a long time ago, or a few months ago.
It's difficult to find these because they do try and find places to locate them. I found this one at the library a few years ago, although I went over there the other day and they don't have any. I think in Trinidad Abstract they sell them, but it's not the places that tourists
Well, if
usually
we were
want.
gonna have a historical weekend, wouldn't that be a great time to just hand them out to
We
up
could
and
do
down the
that.
sidewalk?
We could do that, or we could put them in various places, throughout town for the summer season coming up.
Print looks really small. I don't mean to offend whoever did this in 1986, but I just suggest that younger eyes might want something with bigger print.
You
It's
might, you
very,
wanna
very
take it and
small.
look through it, so
Please,
you know what it
thank
is?
you. I have never seen it, never seen it around town, so I appreciate it.
Do they still have some insert, or do they
Very,
still,
very
would they have to
small.
reprint it, is that what they would do?
I have not approached them yet, so I wanted to see what your thoughts were, then I would probably ask them what price they would want for a large printing of them.
It's probably good for a walking tour and to go around with somebody that really knows the building and take home.
And I believe that was everything I had.
Any other pieces of business?
No,
I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Yes, oh, you can make a motion.
so moved.
Do I have a
Second.
second?
Second.
All in favor? So close.
Careful, everything, no more ice, right? It won't be icy tonight.